The stars shimmered cold and distant over the charred remains of what was once the capital city of the AlienInvasion. Smoke curled lazily from the ruins, the air still thick with the scent of scorched metal and vaporized stone. The silence was a graveyard of civilizations, one of many buried beneath the boots of the Jareth, the so-called galactic predators. They did not mourn. They did not hesitate. They moved forward. On the bridge of the command dreadnought Oblivion Maw, Supreme Commander Karzo observed the aftermath with quiet satisfaction. His exoskeletal armor glinted beneath the ambient blue of the starfield, every spike and contour carved from the obsidian bones of conquered worlds. His mandibles twitched as data streamed across his HUD. Another empire reduced to embers, another threat nullified. Yet his red glowing eyes did not gleam with triumph, only with a measured calm of inevitability. He had never known defeat. Behind him, Commander Vestar approached with precise, almost reverent gait. The resistance has been purged. Their stronghold fell within projected time. Karzo did not turn. They cried, and they, yes, and begged. He gave a low click of contempt. Weakness echoed the same everywhere. Pleas, bargains, tears. Predictable. Send the message. Karzo said, "Let it be known the Archelon fell in a single day." It had been a long time since the Jareth encountered anything resembling a worthy adversary. They were forged in a world of eternal storms, where survival required cruelty, intellect, and dominance. Their culture honored strength above all else. No diplomacy, no compassion, just the hunt. Civilizations that tried to speak reason were silenced. Those that resisted were hunted for sport, their leaders mounted in trophies of polished bone. There were whispers, of course, passed quietly among the lower ranks, a world unseen, untested, tucked to the edge of a minor galactic spiral. Some ancient data artifact referred to it only as Terra. Others called it Earth. To most of the Jareth, it was an afterthought, an undeveloped biosphere crawling with primates and wars of small consequence. But Karzo remembered something else. He had once seen in the archives an image hidden deep in encrypted sectors, grainy, ancient, depicting a figure made not of metal or plasma, but flesh and will. The figure stood in fire, surrounded by ruins, lifting a crude weapon skyward. And despite the destruction behind him, there was defiance in the human's eyes. Not arrogance, not madness. Defiance. It disturbed Karzo more than he admitted. Still, protocol dictated expansion. They were nearing the rim, and Earth stood inconveniently in their projected path. As with all other worlds, it would be assessed, dominated, and erased if found wanting. Orders were issued. Fleet movement commenced. And across the 1,000-deep fleet, warriors howled the rights of conquest. They sharpened their limb blades and reconfigured their cloaking harnesses. The hunt was beginning again. But not all Jareth felt the same fire. Deep within Oblivion Maw, in the observation vaults, young scout-killer Threx watched the Earth feed in silence. He was not yet hardened by war, still marked by the silver hue of unblooded carapace. Unlike others of his caste, he asked questions, dangerous ones. "Why do we hunt them if they have no fleets?" he murmured to the AI proxy. They possessed nuclear capabilities, rudimentary, yet potent in desperation, high emotional volatility, technological asymmetry. The AI responded flatly. "And yet," Threx whispered, "they survive?" The AI paused. "Correct. Why?" No answer came. It wasn't curiosity alone that haunted Threx. It was something he couldn't name. An ache when he watched the old Earth transmissions. Clashes of Thunder's machines, humans tear into their own kind with fury and innovation. They were fractured, contradictory, maddening. But they endured. And something about that terrified him more than any death scream he'd heard across the stars. Elsewhere, Karzo stood before the tactical holosphere. The mission was simple. Annihilate surface resistance. Eliminate leadership. Leave a beacon for others. This is what becomes a defiance. Yet he hesitated a breath longer than usual before approving final descent protocols. Something wrong? Vestar asked. They build weapons not meant to match our power, but to deny it. They fight as though surrender is foreign. Primitive desperation. Carzo's jaw tightened. Perhaps, or perhaps something else. The fleet entered subspace. Time rippled like liquid glass. By the time Earth's astronomers detected the gravitational anomalies, it was too late. High above the planet's crust, in Earth's mesosphere, a black wound tore open in the sky. From its spilled Titanic craft, hollow, jagged shapes like skeletal beasts born of void and fire. No warning, no parley, just darkness. The first cities fell in minutes. The predators descended like nightmare angels, their claws raking through buildings, red optics slicing through the smoke. Bullets barely scratched them. Rockets staggered, but did not stop. Entire air squadrons vanished in bursts of electromagnetic disruption. And still, humanity resisted. Carzo watched the footage from orbit. A man, scarred, limping, barely armored, dragged an injured child from the rubble, then turned, alone, to fire a stolen predator weapon into the legs of an advancing war beast. He died, but not before taking the creature with him. It was not rational, not strategic, but it worked. The Earth campaign was not proceeding as cleanly as expected. They flank us in the shadows, one Predator commander reported. Set traps using our own fallen. They mimic our signals, another growled. Their AI is primitive but adaptive. They're not fighting to win, said Vestar, voice taut with confusion. They're fighting so we lose. Threx, watching from above, knew then these were not the hunted. They were something worse. They were unpredictable. In the charred forests of northern Russia, a Zara scout team vanished, later found eviscerated, not by weapons, but hand-forged blades dipped in neurotoxin. In the deserts of Nevada, an ambush led by ragtag militias slaughtered an entire Predator skirmish unit by exploiting atmospheric interference and mirror terrain. Every death, every skirmish taught the humans something. Every victory taught the Predators fear. Carzo stared at a cracked combat visor brought to him by a retrieval unit. Blood smeared the edge, Jareth blood. Something stirred inside him. Not dread, memory. He remembered the archive image. The man in the fire, the look in his eyes. And now he saw it again, not in old data, but live, millions of them. Some broken, some weeping, but all standing, firing, screaming, bleeding, fighting. The Jareth had faced monsters before, but monsters wanted to dominate, conquer, reign. These humans only wanted one thing, to endure. And for the first time, the Supreme Commander could not predict the outcome. He turned from the screen, mandibles clenching in quiet consideration. Prepare the core legions. Tell them this world is not yet broken. Behind him, the stars of Earth's sky burned silently. And for the first time in their history, the Predators hesitated before the hunt. The sky over Colorado turned the color of bruised iron moments before the breach. Clouds fractured like glass, revealing the darkness beneath. It wasn't a meteor storm, as early reports had guessed, nor military tests gone wrong. No, what unfolded above the Rockies was deliberate, surgical, and horrifying in its precision. And when the first Predator dreadship tore through the atmosphere, every world leader realized too late. Earth was not the apex. Colonel Adrian Kessler stood in the command bunker of NORAD, eyes fixed on the trembling screen as seismic reports flooded in. Her uniform was unbuttoned at the collar, sweat darkening the edges. She slept barely an hour in 3 days. Give me eyes on the Denver corridor, she barked. Ma'am, we've lost 3 recon drones, burned midair. Satellite thermals picking up kinetic entry points from orbit. No propulsion signature. Stealth drops. She cursed under her breath. They're deploying ground units. What do we do? A young lieutenant asked, voice cracking. We bleed them, she said, 1 inch at a time. Across the hemisphere, chaos blossomed like wildfire. The Jareth didn't attack like Earth's past enemies. They didn't take hostages. They didn't broadcast ultimatums. They simply arrived and began to erase. Cities in Asia and Europe fell within hours, not days. Civilian evacuation protocols collapsed under the speed and scale of the assault. Whole regions were shrouded in static as communication lines were severed. But amidst the fire and collapse, something emerged scattered but unbreakable. resistance. In the broken remains of Tokyo, an engineer named Daisuke Mori rigged frequency scramblers from microwave emitters, disrupting Predator sensors long enough for evac teams to extract over 700 civilians. In a collapsed cathedral in Madrid, a priest with no military training led a band of survivors through Predator patrols using centuries-old catacombs beneath the city. And in the Appalachian wilderness, a retired Marine, call sign Bishop, reassembled an old Black Ops unit that hadn't seen combat since Kosovo. Their motto, adapt, overcome, kill. Bishop's unit struck from the shadows, dismantling dropships, salvaging weapons, reverse engineering tactics within days. They moved like ghosts, fought like wolves. But they were still human, still vulnerable. In one skirmish near Huntsville, Alabama, they captured something none had dared dream possible, a living predator. It had been wounded in a blast that took out half a bridge. Bishop's team had found it crawling from the wreckage, trailing viscous black blood, optics flickering. They didn't kill it, not out of mercy, but curiosity. "You're not a god," Bishop muttered as they hauled it into containment. "Just another asshole with sharp toys." The creature didn't speak, not in words, but it watched them, and they watched it back, every second steeped in tension. At a secure underground facility beneath D.C., Adrian Kessler stood before the containment chamber. Bishop, arms crossed, leaned against the wall behind her. "You really think this thing's going to tell us anything?" "I don't need it to talk," she said. "I need to learn." They studied its weapons. Plasma-based with biologically attuned firing mechanisms. They studied its armor, flexible, adaptive, fused with neural mesh. They analyzed its blood, hyperoxygenated, resistant to trauma, laced with nanites. But the biggest surprise wasn't the biology. It was the patterns. Every time it exposed to new variables, the head researcher explained, it adapts, learns. It's not just reacting, it's strategizing. "Like us," Kessler said quietly. "No," Bishop corrected. "Like a cornered animal. It won't stop until it's certain we're not prey." The deeper they probed, the more disturbing the picture became. The Jareth weren't simply invaders. They were hunters. Every engagement was a test, every withdrawal a recalibration. And that meant humanity's defiance wasn't confusing them. It was educating them. Kessler understood then. Time wasn't on Earth's side. Every failed assault, every lost squad, made the enemy stronger. If they didn't outpace the learning curve, they would be wiped out. But Earth had something the Jareth didn't. Desperation fueled by imagination. In South Africa, drones were converted into kamikaze units using salvaged Predator cores. In Argentina, wind turbines were turned into electromagnetic field generators that shorted out Jareth's stealth armor. Crowdsourced strategies emerged on hidden networks. Data shared across continents in real time. A new kind of war was evolving, chaotic and brilliant. And then came the spark that changed everything. During a night operation in Siberia, a teenager with a hacked Predator gauntlet managed to interface with one of their drones. The gauntlet's memory core revealed partial schematics of the invasion fleet. Weak points in the dreadship substructure. Not many, but enough. It was proof they could bleed. Word spread fast. Plans were drawn. Targets marked. But victory required unity. And Earth had never been good at unity. Kessler took to the emergency broadcast network, what was left of it. "This isn't a war for land," she said, her face pale but voice unwavering. "It's a war for narrative. They want to write us as weak, as irrelevant. But the story of humanity has never been simple. We are flawed, divided, stubborn. But when pushed, we adapt. When cornered, we evolve. If they expect surrender, they misunderstood the species they're dealing with." Across radios and stolen Predator comms, her voice echoed. From the trenches of Ukraine to the jungles of Brazil, people listened. And something shifted. The war wasn't over. Far from it. But the arc bent differently now. Even Karzul, orbiting in his obsidian throne, sensed it. He watched the footage in silence. Humans scavenging, weaponizing, surviving. It made no tactical sense. They should have broken. Their infrastructure was ruined. Their species scattered. And yet they endured. They're learning, Vestar said, Eyes narrowed. "No," Karza replied. "They're remembering." He recalled Earth's ancient signals, the wars, the revolutions, the fire and grit encoded into their history. These creatures had always known conflict. It wasn't new to them. It was native, woven into their blood. For the first time in the campaign, he delayed a wave, not from fear, from respect. Back on Earth, Bishop handed Kessler a piece of scavenged tech. A Predator visor cracked at the lens. "What do you see?" he asked. She turned it over, noticing her own reflection. "Us," she said, "the way they see us." And her mouth tightened. They've made a mistake. The second wave would come. Stronger, smarter. But this time, Earth would be waiting. And it wouldn't be silent. Not anymore. The scorched remains of Berlin smoked beneath a steel-gray sky as Allied remnants regrouped in what was once Alexanderplatz. A mesh of rubble, broken statues, and twisted steel framed the city's bones. Yet within the ruins, movement stirred. Not the march of predators, but the quiet orchestration of resistance. Colonel Adrian Kessler emerged from a hollowed-out U-Bahn tunnel, her boots crunching on frost-coated debris. She pulled the collar of her jacket higher, shielding her face from the biting wind and the lingering stench of ozone and ash. Beside her strode Daisuke Mori, gone from weeks without proper sleep, yet his mind sharper than ever. Slung over his back was a modified Jareth pulse emitter, now patched with wires, Earth-made capacitors, and a car battery. How reliable is that thing? Kessler asked, glancing at the jury-rigged device. Daisuke smirked. About as reliable as trusting a porcupine to babysit a balloon. But it might scramble their perimeter sensors long enough to sneak a unit in. That's all we need. Below them, in the underground command hub, the last fragments of Earth's high command coordinated what they had grandly named Operation Godfall. The name was Bishop's idea. Morale mattered. You couldn't fight monsters with logic alone. You needed mythology, too. Their objective was simple in definition and terrifying in scope. Board a Predator dreadship, plant a quantum disruptor in its fusion core, and blow it to hell. The problem wasn't the ship, it was getting there. To reach it, they'd need to traverse occupied Berlin, bypass 3 Predator sentry lines, infiltrate a staging spire, and hijack an orbital tether, one of the vertical launch constructs used to deliver Jareth ground troops. "You're thinking too much," Bishop muttered to Daisuke as he adjusted his gear beside a camouflaged APC. "I'm thinking the success rate of this operation is under 4%. Bishop offered a dry chuckle. That's 4 times better than nothing. With them was Asha Rahim, a sniper from the fallen Nairobi defense grid. She was silent, efficient, and rarely missed. Her role was Overwatch, but truthfully, she served as the soul of the team. When others broke under the weight of despair, her calm steadied them. They moved under cover of night, masked by an electromagnetic interference field Daisuke had programmed using captured Predator algorithms. The sky above was filled with the slow drift of warships, silent, looming, watchful. Every block they passed bore scars, blasted buildings, skeletal vehicles, children's drawings on cracked walls that would never be finished. The city had died screaming, and its echoes traveled on the wind. Inside a ruined museum, the team encountered a survivor group. 27 civilians, mostly elderly and children, holed up in the basement. Kessler's first instinct was to reroute, not risk the mission. But Bishop stepped in. "They're not weight," he said. "They're proof. Proof that life endured. Proof that what they fought for wasn't abstract." Asha handed out ration packs. Daisuke left behind a small generator. They moved on. The first engagement came 3 hours later. 3 Jareth warriors patrolling a scorched alleyway. The resistance fighters used sound lures and misdirection to isolate one, taking it down with coordinated fire and scavenged plasma rounds. The other 2, alerted, attacked with brutal efficiency. Bishop lost 2 of his men, Juno and Ortega. Their bodies were left where they fell. There was no time for grief. Every step toward the spire was a gamble, every second a battle against fear. At last, they reached the perimeter. The tower was immense, rising into the clouds, wrapped in black metal and humming with power. Around its base, dozens of Predator constructs stood sentinel, scanning in rhythmic pulses. Daisuke activated the emitter. The signal burst out like a scream, jagged and raw. The sentries twitched. Two fell. A gap opened in their field of vision, just wide enough. "Go," Kessler ordered. They ran. Explosions followed, noise and light flaring as the perimeter retaliated. They climbed, dodged, weaved through collapsing girders and scorching plasma. Asha covered them from a nearby building, her rifle singing death. At the apex of the tower, a docking platform extended. One of the smaller dreadships hovered above, tethered to the tower by a skeletal bridge. Bishop reached it first, firing a magnetic anchor that latched onto the hull. They ascended. The inside of the vessel was a hive of breathless silence, lit by dim red pulses, the walls moving with faint biological undulations. The Jareth didn't build their ships. They grew them. The architecture was alive. They split into teams. Daisuke and Kessler headed toward the engineering core with the disruptor. Bishop and Asha secured the exit route. The further they moved, the more they understood the magnitude of what they faced. The ship was a war cathedral, lined with trophies, bones, artifacts, banners of conquered worlds. Kessler passed a human helmet, charred and fused. Daisuke stared. "How many worlds have they destroyed?" "Doesn't matter," she replied. "We're not done yet." Reaching the fusion core took them through a ventilation shaft the size of a city street. They crawled, clutching the device, as organic sensors pulsed around them. Daisuke triggered a short burst of static, disrupting the surveillance net for a fraction of a second, enough to place the charge. But just as they secured it, a tremor shook the ship. Alarms flared. They had been found. Extraction compromised. Bishop's voice growled over comms. Multiple hostiles inbound. Kessler clenched her jaw. "Can we detonate remotely?" "Yes, but range is short. Needs to be triggered from inside the ship or we die trying," she finished. Asha's voice came through next, calm and steady. "I'll do it." "No," Kessler said immediately. "You're the command. Daisuke is the tech. Bishop's the hammer. Me? I'm a bullet." "Damn it, Asha. I volunteered for this war the day Nairobi burned. This is my choice." Silence followed. Then Bishop's voice. "We'll make sure it counts." They fought their way back through the hive. One by one, the team dropped. Daisuke took a slash to the thigh but limped on. Bishop lost a shoulder plate and half his hearing to a sonic mine. Kessler's side bled from a graze. Only Asha moved untouched. She waited at the core, hand on the trigger, watching her friends escape. Kessler stopped at the airlock, turning one last time. "I'll tell them," she whispered. "No," Asha replied. "Make sure they win. That's the only story I want told." The door sealed. Moments later, light exploded behind them. The dreadship shattered like a dying star, a ripple of burning atmosphere marking its fall. All across Earth, people looked up and saw fire. But for the first time, it wasn't their cities burning. It was theirs. Kessler collapsed beside the wreckage, bruised and battered, but alive. And in the blackness above, the Predator fleet hesitated. Because for the first time since the war began, they had lost. Ash rained for 3 days after the dreadship fell. Its remains were scattered across the German countryside, shards of alien alloy embedded in the soil like foreign teeth. Farmers returned to their ruined homes and found black fragments glowing faintly in the fields. The earth had wounded a god, and the scar it left behind was not just physical. It was psychological. It whispered to the survivors, "They are not invincible." But the war was not won. In orbit, Karzul stood inside the command sanctum of the mothership, gazing at the ghostly hologram of the destroyed dreadship. Dozens of Jareth commanders surrounded him in a ring of silence. They did not speak, because they knew the truth. The humans had done what no other species had. They had killed one of the fleet. They learned like fire. Vestar said at last, his mandibles twitching, "Consume or evolve." Karzul's reply was cold. "Then we must drown them." He issued the command. No more calculated engagements. No more observation. The humans were to be broken. Fast, hard, without hesitation. A final push. On Earth, Adrian Kessler knew this escalation was coming. The loss of the dreadship had bought them time, not safety. Intel gathered from scavenged wreckage revealed an impending full-scale planetary bombardment, one that would crack the mantle, boil oceans, erase continents. So she convened the final council. It was not made of world leaders. Most were gone or cut off. It was soldiers, engineers, hackers, survivors, people who had seen too much to pretend anymore. They met in an old NATO command bunker beneath Oslo, one of the last secure locations on Earth. "We can't fight a fleet," said Daisuke, seated beside her with a brace strapped to his leg. "Not in orbit, not with our gear." "No," she agreed, "but we can make this planet uninhabitable. Not for us, for them." The room went still. "You want to poison the Earth?" asked Major Decker, a former biochemist-turned-guerrilla leader. "Scorch our own skies? If they can't take the planet, they leave. They don't linger in lost hunts. That's their pattern. We make Earth the one meal they can't stomach." It was unthinkable, but it was also necessary. Project Emberfall was born that night. The plan was brutal. They would detonate a series of high-yield atmospheric disruptors across the globe, devices that would saturate the stratosphere with metallic particulates, interfering with Predator optics and mobility. At the same time, Earth's remaining orbital weapons would target fleet choke points, coordinated to create chaos at the moment of maximum confusion. The side effect? Climate collapse. Sunlight would dim for years. Crops would fail. Billions would suffer. But Earth would be free. Kessler did not flinch. "We're not saving the world," she said. "We're making sure it lives long enough to save itself." Bishop, back in action despite a fractured clavicle, took command of the Southern Dispersal Unit. He led his team across the Sahara in retrofitted dune crawlers, evading Predator scouts and sandstorms alike. One of his men, a former Argentinian firefighter, died laying the first beacon. No one paused. In the Arctic, Daisuke and a team of quantum physicists built the primary ignition array. They worked in silence, lit by auroras and the flicker of geothermal generators. Each calculation they made brought them closer to darkness, but also survival. And in Beijing, now a jungle of broken steel, a new resistance cell emerged under the leadership of a teenager named Jia. She had grown up during the invasion, learned to kill at 15, and now commanded hundreds. Her job was the riskiest: draw the fleet's attention. They broadcast false transmissions, staged battles with sound and light, used old Chinese folklore songs coded into encrypted signals to bait the Jareth toward decoys. And it worked. The fleet reoriented. Carzo watched Earth churn below. His analysts warned him of rising interference in the upper atmosphere. But he ignored them. "They are only stalling," he said. "They cannot win." But something gnawed at him. A memory, not his, but genetic. A passed-down warning from another hunt, another world. A race that had done the same. Not survive. Resist. On the day of Emberfall, the skies were clear. Too clear. Predator ships formed an eclipse over Europe, preparing to commence bombardment. Energy began to pulse in their cannons. Then the clouds ignited. From the Mariana Trench to the Canadian Shield, the devices detonated in synchronized fury. Metallic dust filled the sky. Light bent strangely. The sun vanished behind a veil of artificial storm. Jareth sensors failed. Optics fuzzed. Communications collapsed. And Earth fought back. In the chaos, human satellites, long thought destroyed, activated autonomous routines. Targeting systems blinked online. Lasers, missiles, repurposed mining drills, anything that could reach the sky, launched upward. Several smaller warships fell. Not many, but enough to terrify. In the Oslo command bunker, Kessler watched the battle unfold in real time. "Status?" she asked, breath sharp in her chest. "Beijing cell reports successful decoy ops." Daisuke's array triggered. Bishop's final beacon deployed. And the fleet? Scattering. She closed her eyes, then opened them with steel in her gaze. Send the final transmission. The message went out on every frequency. It wasn't a threat or a plea. It was a statement. To the Jareth: "You will not tame this planet. You will not conquer its people. We do not surrender. We infect. Every time you kill one of us, we learn. Every time you strike, we strike harder. Leave. or die with us. In the orbiting mothership, Karzul watched the surface flicker with strange lights, his ships adrift in data silence. And for the first time in his long, storied life, he chose retreat, not out of weakness, but out of understanding. Earth was not prey. It was plague. Weeks passed. The skies remained dark. Millions died in the aftershocks, famine, cold, radiation sickness. The world was broken, but not gone. Communities rebuilt slowly. Underground farms, solar bunkers, data cores carried on foot across continents. Children born during the war grew into new leaders, ones who had never known peace, but now had the chance to define it. Kessa remained in Oslo, her hair gray, her body worn. One morning, she walked to frost-covered ruins and found a small group of kids laughing over a rusted predator mask, kicking it like a toy. She smiled for the first time in years. Nearby, Daisuke taught solar wiring to a group of young engineers. Bishop had returned to the Appalachian Hills, content to vanish into the trees. Ja became a symbol, carved into walls, printed in ink, remembered in chants. The war wasn't a victory. It was survival, and survival was enough. The galaxy would remember Earth not as a defeated world, but as a feral, stubborn anomaly. Predators had feared nothing, until they fought humans.